Sean, I want to get into an article you wrote. You can find it at NESN.com, on NESN.com. Patriots surprise cuts after training camp. So you're projecting what we can see around 8 players that could be a surprise to many fans of, wait, that guy's getting cut already? I'm going to list off the names, Sean. Let me know if I left anyone off. But on this, you have Bailey Zappe, Joe Milton, Cole Strange, JuJu Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Austin Hooper, Chad Ryland, or Marcellus Dial. So that's 8 players you have there. Mm-hmm. Who at you jumps off, and what's the one player you're focusing on the most of like, hey, is this someone I'd pay attention to because I don't see him being a Patriot for much longer?
Yeah, I think the name that kind of stands out is Tyquan Thornton in terms of like pretty much the obvious one to me. I think that, it's going to come down to him and JuJu, and, it's really Demario Douglas is a definite. Jalen Polk is a definite. Javon Baker is a definite. Kendrick Bourne, I would say, is a definite. KJ Osborne, I would assume is a roster lock at this point as well. But then you get into, those guys, JuJu, Tyquan, Jalen Reagor, they're fighting for 1, maybe 2 spots, depending on how the Patriots kind of deal with like Kendrick Bourne to start the season. But yeah, I would say the one that kind of jumps out to me is, Bailey Zappe. I think he's as good as gone.
Yeah, I want to hear that. Why Bailey Zappe to you right now is as good as gone?
I mean, this is kind of a conversation that we've had for since, the end of the draft in April. I mean, it kind of the writing was on the wall as soon as they selected Drake May, which was, kind of the obvious decision at that point. But then when they doubled down with Joe Milton, it really became like, Bailey's job is gone. And so I think I think that's going to play out that way. I'm actually curious to see, and I wrote about this as well. I'm curious to see if they do keep 3 quarterbacks, on their initial 53. So if they keep Joe Milton, and a lot of that is just because of when it comes that time, late August, there's so many roster shuffling and roster gymnastics really as you cut down the roster to 53. And we saw how Bill Belichick handled the Bailey Zappe thing last year. I mean, sometimes you just kind of might have to roll the dice because you want to keep one player over the other. And, if the Patriots release Joe Milton, I would assume that's with, their hope that they re-sign him to the practice squad. And so maybe he continues to develop in New England, but I think that's something that I could see playing out too. I think a big conversation right now is like, yes, the Patriots are going to keep 3 quarterbacks. But I do think that there's a chance that when it comes down to it, it's really just Jacoby Brissett and Drake May on the initial 53.
The way I look at for Bailey Zappe, I understand the 3 quarterbacks. This kid is still auditioning for the offensive staff in New England and basically for the entire NFL, because what he's going to hope is throughout training camp, they're going to have joint practices, the Patriots will, and obviously they'll have their preseason games. If he could go out there week 1, week 2 of their preseason and show he can play in now another new system, which he was drafted 3 years ago, and he was under Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, Bill O'Brien, and now Alex Van Pelt. If he can grasp a 4th system in 4 years, because let's go back to his college days, I mean, there's upside there. And Bailey Zappe's ceiling is a backup quarterback, but it's one that you trust can come in for 1 game or a few and keep everything on schedule and keep the offense in check and not lose you games. But if he could also go out and prove that to the Patriots staff, they may look at their quarterback room and go, okay, so right now Jacoby Brissett's our week 1 starter. Drake May, we got to get his footwork right. We got to get his throwing motion quicker. We have to get a quicker release from him. And also we got to make sure our offensive line protects him. But if we don't want him to be a backup quarterback in case stuff hits the fan, who's going to be the actual backup on game day? Because there could be a practice squad guy. And that's where I see Joe Milton landing, in which the Patriots can cut him and practice squad him, or someone else can take him. But Jacoby's a QB1 to me. And then that is the actual toss-up between Drake May and Bailey Zappe of who is the backup. And the reason for that is they don't want to rush and screw up any progress they make with Drake May. I think he's going to dazzle us in training camp. I think he's going to look terrific. He's going to be a huge upgrade from what we've seen in that position over the last few years. But again, is he ready to be an NFL quarterback consistently week to week? And is their offensive line ready to protect him? Because I think that's the most important thing in all this. So that's why I don't see Bailey Zappe going anywhere. But what about Cole Strange? How did you get to that conclusion, add Cole Strange to this list?
I got to double down on this Bailey Zappe thing. I'm very surprised to hear you say this.
It has to make sense for the team because if Jacoby Brissett goes out there and gets injured, and then you throw in Drake May in there and he's not ready, and the offensive line's not ready, then you're going to see Drake May regress. I want him to play. He needs live game action. That's the only way he'll get better, and the only way you can assess what you have in Drake May. But I'm looking at early on in the season. If something happens week 1, week 2, they have to prepare for every scenario because this offensive line, Sean, isn't good. It's not good. You have Cole Strange on this list, who's your 29th overall pick a few years ago. But when we look at the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomeses and the CJ Strouds and right now Jordan Love, these young quarterbacks that came in as a starter and performed well, they had good offensive tackles. They had serviceable offensive tackles at the minimum. Well, the kid you took in Caden Wallace, where he told us he's a left tackle, last time we saw him, he was at right. Chuks Okorafor, who's been in the league for 6 years, has only taken 2 snaps at left tackle. Right now, he's your starting left tackle. Now, of course, what it boils down to, who's the best 5 that play together. And if Drake May can get the ball out in under 2.8 seconds, and he's more mobile than Jacoby, which helps this offensive line, it could all work out perfect. But I'm not going to set sails and ship Bailey Zappe out right away because I want to protect the long-term investment that we have in Drake May, that the Patriots have in Drake May. I want to protect that investment, and I don't want to screw him up in year 1, and that sets you behind in year 2. Because as we saw, all the promise we had in Mac Jones in year 1, they screwed it up in year 2, and he never bounced back. It's about breaking bad habits out of Drake May, and you cannot rush him onto an actual field going against live bullets before he's ready. And that's why I see the value in Bailey Zappe. I don't think Joe Milton's close to being ready to an NFL quarterback, but Bailey Zappe has shown he can keep your offense on schedule and execute an NFL offense. He's done it with awful play calling and 2 morons running an offense. And he's been able to do it, though, with Bill O'Brien, who is a great offensive-minded guy who had one hand tied behind his back of who his offensive coaching staff was. But he did it with Bill O'Brien. So he's shown me 2 years over 2 different scenarios he can do it. That's why I'm not sold on getting Bailey Zappe out of here. Now, if there was a 3rd-round pick floated out there, a 2nd-round pick, then I'm going, all right, trade it because he's nothing but a backup quarterback. I play every scenario, Sean. I'm thinking of everything, man.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think I understood. So where you're coming from right now, I understood that when we were in, a few months ago, when we were in, May and June, they weren't going to cut him right away because what if something happens? Jacoby Brissett suffers an injury the first day of training camp or whatever, the case may be. So I understand that, but I can't see them keeping Bailey Zappe just in the fluke chance that their starter goes down with a season-ending injury. Because then, maybe you have to throw Drake May in that game or, he plays the second half of week 1 or something like that. But then if that's the case, then you just figure it out the next week and you sign someone you could probably sign Bailey Zappe at the time. And, you sign him up for nothing at the time and he comes in. And so that's kind of how I view it. I do think that it made plenty of sense for them to keep him in May, in June. But if you're getting into late August and Bailey Zappe earns a roster spot in the 53-man roster because of the off chance that your starting quarterback has a season-ending injury, I just can't see I can't see your best 53 players on that roster then.
And it's a Bailey Zappe that can be an emergency QB, or it's a Bailey Zappe that can be on a practice squad, or it's a Bailey Zappe that, again, is in case of emergency. So that's why I understand, yes, he can get cut and brought back, and understand the minutia of constructing a roster in the NFL. It gets very into the details, very into the weeds. I'm just not going to write off Bailey Zappe being in New England just yet, because there's for 2 cases where he's shown them the last 2 years. They know what they get with him as a backup. And to me, it's valuable, especially with how important the position is. But now, okay, let's say Drake May in July and August is just on fire, and he proves he can be ready to play. And you look at your offensive line and go, we're going to run heavy. We have 2 good running backs. We can get enough time with this offensive line, then cut ties with Bailey Zappe. Because if you feel you're ready and the entire situation around Drake May is ready, on top of him being then if stuff hits the fan or if nothing happens, then by week 7, week 8, you go, let's put Drake May in. Let's get him a half season of starter reps. Or by week 10, let's give him 7 games, right? Then they go that course. I want to go with the Cole Strange, though, one. What an interesting saga it's been for him. We know what happened. Bill Belichick, one of his final pieces doing the Jake Gyllenhaal kiss and peace out the door to the Patriots was, I'm taking a guard out of the FCS at 29 overall when they needed a quarterback, they needed a receiver, all that. Cole Strange never got healthy, was never right last season, didn't finish as an active player at the end of the season because he had to get surgery. But why do you have him on possibly a player you see getting cut on this list?
Yeah, so I think, and we might even have this conversation before, I think like entering the offseason, I didn't think his roster spot for next year was a lock. And that was before everything came, all the reports came out about how serious the injury was and the fact that he's going to miss significant time. Like I felt like his roster spot was up in the air prior to that. And so kind of disclaimer with this, because he can start on PUP, and that would mean that he's not against their initial 53-man roster. So it wouldn't serve as a huge benefit to cut him in late August in comparison to, September or something like that, whenever you're kind of needing to make moves, roster transactions and stuff. But I would just say that there's a lot of things working against Cole Strange. They have a lot of healthy bodies. They have a lot of young, healthy guys. The first rounder that just came in, Layden Robinson. I mean, he's now part of the organization, and he was drafted by this organization. Cole Strange wasn't. He was drafted, like you just said, he was drafted by Belichick. So, in addition to Layden Robinson, you have City So. You have,
Antonio Mafi.
Yep. I was gonna say they don't have the high end talent in terms of like that, but they have a lot of young, healthy guys. So I could just see, I don't know, I could just see, all things kind of considered, Cole Strange's long-term availability as well as the depth chart, how it currently looks, I could see that being marking the end of Cole Strange.